of our financial system is same kind of transactions, same kind of risk, that means same rules apply. Right now, if a bank takes money from terrorists and the bank and the banker then have broken the law. And that's why banks spend so much time and so much energy identifying who their customers are and reporting suspicious activity to authorities. A lot of crypto firms are not doing these kinds of checks. So crypto has become the preferred tool for terrorists, for ransomware gangs, for drug dealers, and for rogue states that want to launder money.
That's
right.
right.
In 2021, at least $14 billion in digital assets went to criminals. Now, that's a lot of drugs and a lot of ransoms and a lot of bombs and a lot of nuclear materials, but it is likely only the tip of the iceberg.
Your projection?
A new report finds that one crypto exchange alone helped launder over $10 billion for criminals and countries like Iran. Even so, the crypto industry continues to take the position nothing should change. Professor Allen, the crypto industry claims that it doesn't need to do all of the know your customer and other anti-money laundering checks that banks do and stockbrokers do and even Western Union does, because crypto is uniquely transparent. Everything is on the blockchain, so criminals and rogue states that try to launder money in crypto will quickly be found out. Does the fact that the blockchain is public mean that it is more difficult for criminals to launder money using crypto?
In many ways, the blockchain is the worst of all worlds. For everyday people, the blockchain is a permanent public record of all their transactions, which is a privacy nightmare. But for sophisticated players with a vested interest in hiding their transactions, there are all kinds of tools available, mixers, tumblers, etc., that can hide the provenance of their crypto assets. And far from being difficult for criminals to use crypto to launder money, the fact that there aren't KYC checks is the point.
Okay, so crypto is actually easier to do money laundering. Let's look at another crypto industry argument. Professor Allen, the crypto industry claims that it would be too much trouble and maybe even technologically impossible for them to check customers the way that banks and stockbrokers and even Western Union does. But let me ask, do banks and stockbrokers in Western Union have to invest money and resources to make sure that they're set up to conduct those checks?
Yeah, I mean, KYC requirements are simply part of operating a financial services business. But avoiding those requirements, as you say, is critical to many crypto business models. Blockchain-based transaction processing, as we've discussed, is very clunky and expensive. Ms. Schultz has just told us that it can be more efficient. The only way it's more efficient is if it actually avoids the KYC checks that can slow things down. So this crypto business model is in many ways a regulatory arbitrage play.
Right, so actually it's an interesting question. If banks and Western Union said they shouldn't have to follow any money laundering rules so that they could make more money, they could improve their profitability, what would our country say, and what does every country around the world in the financial system say?
No.
Right, okay. So Mr. O'Leary, I know that you are a big supporter of crypto, even after you lost $10 million in FTX's collapse, but you are an experienced investor. So let me ask you, do you believe that the potential benefits of crypto are so promising that we should accept weaker anti-money laundering rules and weaker compliance from crypto firms than we require from banks, from brokers, and from Western Union?
No, I think we should apply the same regulatory structure that we apply to existing trading of stocks and bonds on exchanges tied to broker-dealers. That is not complicated. It's already been implemented in other countries. And so, I take issue, Senator, with your concept that it makes it easier to do money laundering. Currencies have been used for drug trafficking since the 60s in the American dollar, when it was thrown out of a Pico aircraft in a duffel bag.
That's right.
The American dollar is also used by bad actors all the time.
Mr. O'Leary, I appreciate your point that everyone tries to engage in money laundering. That's what terrorists do. That's what drug dealers do. And that's what states like Iran and North Korea have done. The only point I'm trying to make is, should the same rules against money laundering apply to crypto in the way that they apply to banks, to stockbrokers, to credit card companies, to Western Union?
You know,
And I think your answer to that was yes. Is that right?
no,
Mr. O'Leary, you have 30 seconds. Keep your answer short. Your
it's
30.
not yes. I'm just saying if you know your client rules on both sides of the transaction and use a crypto such as USDC that is regulated, you solve this problem, Senator, overnight.
Well, I appreciate that you want the same kind of rules to apply to everyone, and we can talk about what's needed to make that happen. You know, the dark underbelly of crypto is its critical link to financing terrorism and human trafficking and drug dealing and helping rogue nations like North Korea and Iran. Crypto doesn't
Man, she's
get a
just throwing
pass
everything
to help
out.
the world's worst criminals, no matter how many television ads they run or how many political contributions they make. It is time for Congress to make the crypto industry follow the same money laundering rules as everyone else. That is why Senator Marshall and I introduced a bipartisan bill today
Won't
that
work.
requires crypto to follow the same money laundering rules that every bank, every broker, and Western Union all have to follow today. Thank you, Mr.
This political BS. He clearly was not being listened to, and he's the financial expert. So the CEO and founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, and says he denies using, clients' money in a illegal way. And Kevin O'Leary wanted to explain the process of what was happening as he's out on $250 million bail after losing $16 billion in 72 hours. All those clients he lost money, Tom Brady, his wife, a lot of people lost money. That's probably why Brady got a divorce. His wife was involved in that. Her money was tied into FTX. And they were part of the lawsuit. It's quite massive. Well, Binance is the company that Kevin O'Leary begins to talk about the collapse. Well, he's facing 8 counts of conspiracy and fraud. Not Kevin O'Leary, but the founder of FTX. And Mr. Wonderful lost 10 million in the crash. That's a drop in the bucket for him. He'll make that back. But there's others that lost millions as well. And they want to talk about the future of crypto.
Spokesperson. I was paid approximately $15 million for these services, plus approximately $3 million to cover the portion of taxes due. The equity is now most likely worthless, and the accounts have been stripped of their assets and, interestingly, financial records. I've written them all off to zero. The collapse of FTX is nothing new. While this situation is painful for shareholders, employees, and account holders, in the long run, it does not change this industry's promise.
And Kevin O'Leary joins me live now for more on this. Kevin, thanks for being on. I know you were a critic of cryptocurrencies before investing in FTX. So what changed your mind? And what was it about FTX that won you over?
You know, I guest lecture a lot in many colleges and universities, and what I started to see happen, and a lot of these are graduating cohorts of engineering classes where about 1/3 of them are going to be entrepreneurial. That's why I do this. And I slowly started to see that the majority of the class the ones that were really great coders wanted to go work on blockchain. And at the same time, the regulatory environment was changing. It was getting more open in jurisdictions like Canada, Switzerland, United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, et cetera. So it occurred to me as an investor, you can't put this much intellectual capital to work and not expect incredible outcomes. And so the hottest hands over keyboards today work on the blockchain and crypto technologies, and that's, as a result, I've become an investor. When things change, I change. I'm a fiduciary. I have to go and decide where to put capital to work, and certainly I look for new opportunities. This is like being able to invest in the internet in the early days.
Now, Kevin, you defended Sam Bankman-Fried after FTX's collapse, and you even said that you would back him again if he came to you with another opportunity. Why is that, and has his arrest changed your thinking there?
Well, I said that before there was any allegations of all of these nefarious activities, but my point is, for the last 15 years, I have often invested in entrepreneurs that have experienced catastrophic failures, and I will continue to do that. Now, regarding Sam Bankman-Fried, he has to clear his name. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. Nobody does. Clearly, he's been charged, and we're beginning of a legal process. Obviously, I can't invest in that. But my point is, entrepreneurs learn from catastrophic failure. And for the ones that are able to come out the other end alive, they're better off for it.
And now, Kevin, if he is convicted, how would you like to see him held accountable? What does justice look like to you?
Well, I've asked to be put on the credit committee. I've applied for a position there. Normally in venture investing, 8 out of 10 investments would fail, and that happens all the time. In fact, if I had to sit in front of the House every time one of my investments failed, I'd need an apartment there, because that's just the nature. That's the nature of venture investing. The 2 unicorns you get out of 10 are how you make your returns. I guess what I want to do now with this one is stick with it. I intend to teach this in my courses, in class. I want to stay with it. I want to try and recoup as many assets as I can. I'm putting my own resources into a forensic audit. I'm intrigued by how they're able to scrape all the files, the transaction files. You heard from John Ray as well that he has to put this piece together. But the credit committee would be a good place for me to go to work and try and recoup as much capital as I can through Madoff-like clawbacks.
And Kevin, you said in your testimony that we need to get to the bottom of what happened at FTX, but you also say we can't let this collapse cause us to abandon, in your words, the great promise and potential of crypto. So knowing what you know now, what's your advice to those who may be considering investing in crypto but aren't super comfortable with the space?
Well, I think the lesson learned by all is that you cannot invest in an unregulated exchange or broker-dealer. That's primary number one. And so, and I must say, I sensed in the House on the floor of that Senate hearing yesterday, there's a frustration now. These leaders, these lawmakers, these policymakers have had enough of this. They don't want to keep having hearings every 6 months for the next crypto company to blow up and go to zero. So I expect to see some very swift reaction to this now, that it's so in front of the public eye, and every week another $1 billion lost. People are tired of this. There's a way to solve it. You simply regulate it the way we do stocks and bonds, and now's the time to do that.
And see, that's the problem. When you unregulate something, it leaves the door open for stuff like this. So Binary, who was being accused of hiding shares, and he had to buy the stock back. The owner or the CEO of Binance spoke out on what Sam was trying to actually do.
Good. To when you first got the call from Sam and you first had a chance to look at the books, because I think a lot of people are still trying to understand exactly what happened here. How much of this was about commingling? How much of this was about terrible marking of the books? What did you see?
Yeah, I think I got a call from Sam 48 hours after I made the tweet, and then he wanted to talk. So at the beginning, I thought he just wanted to, do a buyout, do an OTC deal to buy out the FTT tokens we had. And then he wanted actually a buyout of the entire firm, of the entire FTX platform. And then, but then we got our team on it. It was pretty clear pretty soon that there's, there's misappropriation of user funds. The user funds are gone. At that point, this clearly that he lied to his users, his investors, his VC investors, his employees. At that point, I thought I couldn't, like whatever data that's in the data room, we couldn't trust anymore. So it was quite hard for us to do that due diligence. So we didn't go very far.
You know, we've all seen his tweets now overnight. Do you think he understood what he was doing?
I think he thought he understood. I think he probably still thinks he understands what he's doing now, which I don't think he should be tweeting.
That's for sure. But in terms of intent, I mean, one of the things that's going to be looked at, I'm sure, by regulators, potentially by prosecutors, is what he intended to do. He seems to suggest in a lot of these tweets that he didn't understand, or he mismarked things, and when I say mismarked, mislabeled things is what I think is the phrase that he's used. And yet, when you looked under the books, clearly it appears that he was demonstrably commingling funds, using the funds to leverage himself up and the like.
Yeah, I think, look, I didn't do the due diligence myself, but I think it will be very, very clear that Sam knows that he was using the user funds to do trading for Alameda, and he has been probably doing this for quite a while that nobody else knew until very recently. Well, a small number of people in FTX probably knew, but most of the other normal employees probably did not know. I think that's probably the most likely situation.
You know, one of the things that I think this has demonstrated to the public about crypto is just how leveraged the business is. How so many of these coins, that FTT token and other tokens have been used to leverage other tokens. How concerned are you about that? And how much leverage is in the Binance system, if you will?
Sure. So I think we are very concerned about anybody using the token they create for leverage, as a collateral. At Binance, we don't do that. We don't use BNB as collateral for anything we do. So it's very simple.
But when you think about the health of the quote-unquote balance sheet of so many of these firms in the crypto space, in the ecosystem, how much of those balance sheets do you think are actual fiat currency that has some stability versus some kind of token or other kind of cryptocurrency that may or may not actually have the value that it portends to have, in part because the float of some of these tokens is so low that it appears the other piece of it is that some people are almost artificially inflating the valuations of these things.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things here. There's the user assets. You should just, every exchange should just hold the user assets as is, as chosen by the users, whatever assets they want to allocate to. There's the operational funds for the business itself. That should be a combination of cryptocurrencies, stable coins, and maybe even some fiat currencies. Every different business can allocate that differently, depending on their risk appetite and business model. Binance has always been profitable. So even today, we're profitable, we're sustainable. So but our rough allocation is about a third in stable coins and then a third in some of the larger coins. And also, we keep the BNB coin that we hold very separately in our accounting. And this has been in our financial reports even from very early days. So we always keep the BNB separate in terms of accounting for the cash flows we have. We do believe that many other platforms may include this as their cash reserves, which is and when they present to potential investors, etc., that may be somewhat risky or misleading. So we don't do that. We have records of our financial statements from very early days. We have always kept BNB separate.
All right. There you have it.